So apologies first and foremost for the bare atmosphere, but I've moved back to my apartment on campus and they repainted the walls, so none of my posters have been able to stay up for longer than about 15 minutes, no matter how much tape I profusely stack on the back of it. um, but on a serious note, the election has just happened. Obviously, we're being inundated by a whole slew of news stories. Uh, but right now, with the uncertainty of ballot counting and what mail-in ballots are, so on and so forth. Just a lot of controversy in terms of whose votes have gone through and a plethora of other things. The uncertainty right now is eating this nation alive and eating a lot of people alive. And with all the social unrest and upheaval we have seen, look at prior to the election day, people were boarding up businesses in anticipation of protesters, and then outside in D.C. there are some wild things going down as well. It's just a lot of things happening right now that give credence to people's insecurity about this is thinking that this is a crazy time, that this is a wild time. And with all of the call outs the president has made at not just USPS, the United States Postal Service, but also at the legitimacy of this voting process, which hasn't been called to question before. And his supporters, I suppose, ardent confirmation of those theories, and saying that the president is correct in his fears and is assuming that the process is rigged against him, which I think there's definitely an extent of media that is definitely inclined to go against President Donald Trump because he is such a polarizing figure and some of his past transgressions. But when it comes to questioning the electorate and the very thing that constitutes the base of what our country's about, democracy, and people having the right to express their choice and their freedoms through voting, it's a pretty out there thing to do. I feel like calling to question the USPS and the legitimacy of this election are both things that are really stirring the pot. I think you can look no further than General Mattis's article in The Atlantic, where General Mattis said that he has never seen an American president actively try to divide his people or their people like President Donald Trump has. And I think saying things like, you can't trust the USPS, or disputing the claims of how everything is coming in terms of results from the election, I think it's a very, very dangerous concoction. You look back at the events that happened in the 2000 presidential election between Al Gore and George W. Bush, and there were a lot of fishy things that happened in Florida, with vote counting, and, was it Gore, was it Bush, back and forth, people feeling like, oh, well, Gore was the rightful president, but, blah, 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 didn't happen. Gore could have challenged the results. He could have appealed. He could have dragged this out for an extended period, but instead, for the purpose of our country's democracy, for the purpose of there being peace and status quo, he said, he conceded. And he said, you were the winner, George W. Bush, and I support the president. Seeing the active, sitting president saying things that sound like he's not going to go without a fight, it's not encouraging. It's pretty intimidating, to be honest, to have your leader, your commander-in-chief, and the most powerful person in the free world saying things that invalidate the democracy in which he presides over, saying that this election is rigged and saying that the USPS is not trustworthy or reliable, when these things are just simply untrue. And it's dangerous to promote conspiratorial things on a platform such as the president. It's a dangerous thing. I remember I was watching this video. It was Hollywood Reporter Actors Roundtable. Not something you'd think there'd be great political discussion from, but it was Robert De Niro, Tom Hanks, Jamie Foxx, Adam Driver, and Shia LaBeouf sitting around talking about acting methodology, prior roles, and some other things. And Jamie Foxx had this great bit, because Jamie Foxx is also, he's worked as a comedian as well. He's kind of a jack of all trades. And he was talking about how he was doing comedy at this event hosted by one of Jerry Jones's sons in Texas. And obviously, a lot of big Texas money. There were some important people that were there. And one of them was former President George W. Bush. And at this event, Jamie Foxx does his bit, comes down, and he sits down. And it just so happens that at his table, former President George W. Bush is there. So, they're talking, they're having good conversations, and he gets to ask him, Mr. President, would you ever do anything to actively critique President Obama or to throw doubt into the presidency of his actions? And President Bush responded, no, I would never do that, because I know how hard of a job it is, and also there needs to be uniformity and unity behind that president. And the fact that from the beginning of his presidency, Donald Trump, it feels like he stoked the embers of malcontent, and there have been a lot of opposing viewpoints clashing up against each other, and he hasn't done anything to really smooth things over. Look at Charlottesville, I believe his first year in office, when he said there were good people on both sides, when that was categorically false. You have protesters, and then you have white supremacists, and I don't think anyone categorizes white supremacists as good people. They're inherently bad. So, and also another instance of that, very similar to that, in the first presidential debate when it came down to the Proud Boys, and he said, and Proud Boys, stand down and stand by. Stand by. That's a bit of a ominous sounding thing. And it just, the whole presidency of Donald Trump has kind of felt like a conspiratorial misinformation campaign where a lot of things are spewed out there. And I'm not saying that, look, any other politician is better or worse. Look at former presidents and what their actions were in their presidencies, and you would probably turn green with how disgusting a number of those presidents' actions were, or maybe all presidents, how their actions were when they were in office. But the fact that our current one, with such a clear skill for conflating things and getting his followers amped up on social media and understanding how to work that in his advantage, it's so caustic and dangerous that he takes that and twists the knife a little bit into the side of the respective American voters and citizens, because it just creates this whole stigma in our society where we have this divide that we see right now. And it used to be that you'd say that people going out and looting streets and going crazy, and there being this incredible disconnect among the two major sides of people, that would never happen in the United States. That eventually there'd be some brokerage where everyone came together, and there was sort of a harmonious advancement to the next plateau of our time, just moving and advancing as we've always sort of done. But right now, with the incredible tension that we have with the popularity of cancel culture, and with the rise in conspiratorial news stories and just general mainstream beliefs, there's a lot of danger in what President Trump is doing in saying that, that you should dispute categorical facts, that you should rally against establishments that have given no just cause to show that, oh yeah, so we could maybe be lying to the American people, such as the USPS, such as the American electorate. We're going through a lot of things right now, and we can't have someone that's going to hold our hands and say everything's okay and just lie, through their teeth to us. But at the same time, we need someone who's going to give it to us straight, and also stand by and say, we're going to make it through this. With World War II, you look at the Blitzkrieg over in England, you had Winston Churchill going on the radio and saying, we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them here, there, everywhere, just bringing up the morale of the collective. And then same thing with FDR. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. You know, his fireside chats, getting on the radio, talking to the American people and saying, look, everything's okay. We don't have a calming voice like that in our Oval Office, nor do we have a singular voice that can give us just the facts within news. We have editorialized political shows that people are taking as the truth, that people are taking in terms of black and white, like what they say is correct, what they say is wrong. It's just what everyone's providing in that editorialized news is, again, their own opinion. That's editorial work. Like what I'm doing right now. You know, you shouldn't take what I say for fact. You should take it as my opinion, and whether you like it or not, that's your choice. But you know that when we're having this conversation. That's our social contract. The news, there's a higher standard for that. You know, what I'm doing right now as a 20-something, you're not expecting a lot from me. I'm going to give you my best attempt. I'm going to give you my best work, what I can do for right now. But when you see someone on NBC or ABC or CNN or Fox News, there's a higher standard to that, right? Am I wrong in assuming that? No. Those are the professionals. Those are the people that cater to tens of millions of people on a regular basis. So when you watch them, and they're conflating stories and they're altering graphics, such as on the Tucker Carlson show, which they took the chop zone and they added some collage aspects to it to make it look worse than it was, which granted wasn't good in the first place, but doing that in the first place and altering and editing the news, it's dangerous. And it's the same thing in other news networks as well that lean to a more a liberal extent as well. It's both sides are guilty of it, but the fact remains that those are the mainstream news sources, and they're editorializing. So then, where are people supposed to get their straight up hard facts from? Where? I mean, obviously, the AP exists. The AP is a very, very respected, reliable source. But realistically, how many people are going to go to that for their news? Not a lot. So, what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to work through all the problems that our society is throwing at us? How are we supposed to work through all the problems that our world is throwing at us? The answer, well, it wasn't always from the president, but you could look to the Oval Office for a start. You could look there out of a respect for the person that was in office and say, maybe they don't offer the exact solution that I subscribe to or that I believe in, but they're respectable and they aren't trying to rile everyone up against each other or give that perception either. And they are offering hope. They're extending an olive branch to all the peoples, whether they voted for them or not. And they're saying, hey, we're going to make it through this. Even if your solution is different than my solution, we're going to work together because we're people at the end of the day. No matter what our beliefs are, we're people. And we'll work through this. And right now, we're not seeing that in the Oval Office. We're not seeing that in a lot of places. And we need a reset. Thank you.